So we already saw input type text, input type email. Today I'm going to show you 3 more with input type date, input type color, or input type range, right? So here's what the input type date does. It creates an input field where the user can enter a date or select a date from a calendar type of interface that will pop up when you click on the widget. You will get a different looking interface depending on which browser you're using, just a slight variation of the interface. A couple of features of the date widget is that you can provide a min and max attribute to specify a period within which the user can select a date, and you can also set a default date to the widget by using the value attribute. Let's have a look at that. First what we'll do is let's organize this a little bit. Let's space these widgets out properly. It doesn't affect the form visually, but just for our understanding. Do that. Great. It's much clearer. Another thing, we don't need to submit buttons. We're just going to stick with, whenever we're creating buttons, we're just going to stick with the button element instead of the input widget, right? So I'm going to remove that line. Save it. That's about it. All right, let's get into the date widget. I'm going to place the date after the email widget. So let's go break line. Then I'm going to set up an input field, and I'm going to set the type to date. When I save this, you see a date widget pops up. We're going to customize this a little bit. Write label, and we'll say date. Save that. You can see that the date label is arrived on here. Now we can select the date, and this is the calendar widget that I'm talking about. You can scroll through the calendar widget. You can scroll through the month. You can pick a date. You can also scroll by year. You can scroll by year and select the year. March. And you can click a date, 14. So this is the date widget. Now we can add a couple of attributes to this. Let's say we want to set a period between which the person wants to, within which the person is allowed to select the date. We can do that using the min and max attributes. So we'll say min is equal to, let's say 2019. So we'll go year, month, day. 2019, we'll say March. We'll say from 01 to max. And we'll say 2019, 03, 15. And if we save this, you'll see that when we are trying to select the date, all the other dates are grayed out, and the only things that you can select are in white. And we had specified from 1st March to 15th March. Now we can also set a default date when the form reloads. So let's say, not date, we say value is equal to, and we can set any date. We can say 2019, 03, let's say 05. If I save this, you'll see that the default date of the date widget will be set to 5th of March. There you go, 5th of March. And from here you can select any date between 1st of March to 15th. I'm going to select 8. That's about the date widget. Let's move on to the next one. We have a color widget, which allows which provides an input field to either to enter a color in hexadecimal format, that's in hashtag RGB format, or use the provided color picker interface, right? So when we use the color, this will be a little bit, this will be easier when I show it to you. So let's add a color widget. So we say input type is equal to color, and we'll say label is color. Save that, and there you go. We end up with a color widget. Using this color widget, you can select a color. I'm going to select blue and click OK. And this is how you select the color. You can set a default color by using the value attribute, but this color has to be mentioned in hexadecimal format. Let me show you what that means. So we can write value is equal to, you'll have to represent any color in a hexadecimal format. Now this is a subject for CSS actually. So a simple way to find out what a hexadecimal color value is you can just Google color picker and you'd end up with a color. And this hashtag followed by 6 digits is what we call a hexadecimal value of a color. So we can select any color. Let's say we select some sort of teal, right? And we can select any shade in here. Let's say I want to go that one. And then I can copy this hexadecimal value, place it into color variables value attribute. And when I save it, you'll see that the color is changed to teal. We don't need to get into the details about hexadecimal values. I'm just showing you a simple way to grab hexadecimal values of any color that you want. We can get into the explanation of that when we do our CSS course. Moving on, we have a range type of input, and what this does is it allows the user to specify a numeric value between the max and min values that you provide. The element is presented as a slider widget instead of a text input field. So now why this range attribute is very helpful is because you can set the range using the min and max attributes. You can set a step counter using the step attribute, that is by how many values the slider should increment, and then you can also set a default selection using the value attribute. Let's have a look at what this looks like. That was color. Let's add another one. Say break, and we'll say input type is equal to, we'll say range. We'll add a label. We'll say the label is range. Okay, save this, and you see we end up with a range widget. Now we can customize this a little bit. So what we can do is we come into the range input widget, and we can set up a minimum value by using min. Let's say our min is 5, and we'll say the max is 20, right? We can change this to anything like quantity, volume, anything. Quantity, let's leave it as quantity. when we save this, you still won't see any numbers over here, but I'll get to that in a bit. Here you can add an increment. By how many values should the slider increment? So that's called a step. So if I say 5, that means the lowest value will be 5, and the next step on the slider will be 10. The next one will be 15, and the final one will be 20. So let's save this and see. So as you can see, it's not smooth scrolling right now. There are different stops. This is 5, 10, 15, 20. This is how you can set up a step. Now you can also set up a default value by saying value. We'll say the value is 10. If I set that and reload the page, you'll see that it starts out at 10. This isn't exactly, you'd want to show some numbers here. We'd do that using a data list element and a label element. But unfortunately, data list and label are not entirely supported in the other browsers except for Chrome to a certain extent. Even if you use it, it still will not be visible because you have to style it through CSS in order for numbers to show up correctly on the slider. So for that very reason, I'm not going to get into data lists and how to show numbers on the slider. But if you're interested and you have a little bit of CSS knowledge, I'd encourage you to check it out on developer.mozilla.org and look for input type range data list, and you'd see how to customize it. So we covered 3 input types for now: date, color, and quantity.